Our landings in the Cherbourg-Havre area have failed to gain a satisfactory foothold, and I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and place was based upon the best information available. The troops, the air, and the Navy did all that bravery and devotion to duty could do. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone. Those are the 39 most important words of the 20th century, and nobody was ever supposed to read them. Dwight Eisenhower wrote that note on the afternoon of June 5, 1944. He sat at a small desk at Southwick House in Portsmouth, England, pulled out a scrap of paper, and wrote his own obituary. The obituary of his career. The obituary of the invasion. The confession that the biggest military operation in human history had been his idea, his decision, and his failure. He folded it up, put it in his wallet, and walked out the door to send 156,000 men across the English Channel. The note has the wrong date on it. He wrote July 5th instead of June 5th. That detail is the one that keeps me up at night. Because Dwight David Eisenhower was one of the most organized, detail-oriented men who ever lived. He planned the most complicated military operation in history down to the minute. He coordinated 5 nations, 11,000 aircraft, 7,000 ships, and 156,000 soldiers across 5 beaches. He could tell you the title schedule for Normandy in his sleep. And he wrote the wrong month on a 39-word note. That's what stress does to a human being. Real stress, not deadline stress, not boss's angry stress. The kind of stress where the fate of the free world is sitting on your desk, and you're the only person alive who gets to decide whether it lives or dies. That kind of stress doesn't make you sharper. It breaks the small things first. Calendar, spelling, sleep, and then it comes for the big things. Most people who know this story focus on the words. They analyze the language. They talk about leadership and accountability and the beauty of mine alone. And all of that is true. It's important. But I want to talk about something different. I want to talk about the paper itself, the physical object, because that piece of paper traveled a journey that tells you more about Eisenhower than any speech he ever gave. He wrote it on June 5th. He folded it and put it in his wallet, and then he lived with it. For the next 30 hours, while the paratroopers were dropping into France, while the ships were crossing the channel, while the first boats were hitting the beaches and the first men were dying in the surf at Omaha, that note was in his pocket. Against his leg. He could feel it every time he moved, every time he reached for a cigarette, every time he stood up or sat down or paced across his office waiting for news. Imagine carrying your own failure in your pocket while you're waiting to see if you've killed 156,000 men. Every hour, the note gets heavier. Every report from the beaches makes it either closer to reality or farther from it. And you can't throw it away because you might need it. You might have to pull it out and read it to the press, and stand there while the world watches you admit that you're the man who lost the war. The first reports from Omaha were catastrophic. The bombers missed. The tanks sank. The soldiers were pinned on the beach. Bodies in the water. Radios dead. Officers killed. The German defenses untouched. For the first few hours, Eisenhower had every reason to believe that the note was about to become his public statement. He didn't pull it out. He waited. Because that's what Eisenhower did. He waited. And while he waited, a handful of terrified men on a French beach decided to stand up and walk into machine gun fire rather than lie on the sand and die. And because of those men, not because of any general, not because of any plan, not because of any aircraft or warship, Omaha held. Barely, but it held. By nightfall on June 6th, the invasion had succeeded. The note stayed in the wallet. The wallet went back in the drawer, and Eisenhower forgot about it. He literally forgot. That note, the most significant piece of personal writing by any commander in the entire war, sat in Eisenhower's wallet for over a month. He didn't frame it, didn't show it to anyone, didn't mention it in any diary entry. It just sat there, crumpled and folded, behind his military ID and whatever else 5-star generals carry in their billfolds. On July 11th, 1944, while going through his wallet for something else, Eisenhower found the note. He pulled it out, looked at it, and started to throw it away. His naval aide, Captain Harry Butcher, saw what it was and stopped him. "Don't throw that away," Butcher said. "That's a piece of history." Eisenhower shrugged and tossed it to him. Butcher kept it. That moment tells you something. Eisenhower didn't think the note was important. It had served its purpose, which was to exist, to be ready. To be the parachute he never had to pull. Once the invasion succeeded, the note was just a scrap of paper with a mistake on it. Why would you keep something like that? Because you're not Eisenhower. You're a normal person who understands that a handwritten failure letter from the architect of D-Day is one of the most remarkable documents in military history. Eisenhower didn't see it that way because Eisenhower wasn't interested in remarkable documents. He was interested in results. Compare that to every other major commander of World War II. MacArthur kept everything. Every photograph, every film reel, every newspaper clipping. The man curated his own legend like a museum director. He staged his landings for the cameras. He wrote his memoirs with himself as the hero of every chapter. He saved every piece of paper that made him look good and somehow lost every piece of paper that didn't. Patton kept a diary, a detailed, profane, brutally honest diary that he clearly intended to be published someday. He wrote it for posterity. He wanted people to know what he thought, what he said, what he felt. He was building his monument one diary entry at a time. Montgomery wrote his memoirs as a victory lap. Every decision was right. Every battle was won because of his genius. Every mistake was someone else's fault. The book is 500 pages of a man congratulating himself. Eisenhower almost threw his most important document in the trash. That's the difference. The other commanders were building their legacies during the war. Eisenhower was too busy fighting it. The note is now at the Eisenhower Presidential Library in Abilene, Kansas, behind glass, in a temperature-controlled case. It's one of the most visited items in the museum. Schoolchildren stand in front of it on field trips. Veterans stand in front of it and cry. Historians have written entire papers analyzing its 39 words. And it has the wrong date. July 5th instead of June 5th. The wrong month. Written by a man whose brain was so overloaded with the weight of what he was about to do that the most basic fact, what month it was, escaped him. I've stood in front of that case. More than once. And every time, I notice something new. The handwriting gets shakier toward the end. The first few words are steady. Controlled. Our landings in the Cherbourg-Havre area have failed. That's a man writing a statement. A professional composing a document. But by the time he gets to the last line, if any blame or fault attaches to the attempted is mine alone. The pen is pressing harder. The letters are rougher. You can almost see his hand tightening around the pen. He was scared. The supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, the man who planned the most ambitious military operation in history, the man who held the fates of millions in his hands, was scared. Not of dying. Eisenhower didn't care about dying. He was scared of failing. Of being the man who sent 156,000 soldiers to their deaths for nothing. Of being the name that history remembers as the man who blew it. And instead of hiding that fear, instead of burying it under bravado or bluster or false confidence, he wrote it down. He put it in his wallet. And he carried it with him into the most important day of the century. That's not courage the way Hollywood shows it. Hollywood courage is the guy who charges the machine gun nest without flinching. Real courage is the guy who writes his own failure letter before anyone else has fired a shot, puts it in his pocket, and then gives the order anyway. There's another detail about this note that almost nobody mentions. Look at the last line again. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempted is mine alone. Now look at what's missing. There's no mention of weather. No mention of intelligence failures. No mention of the decision to go despite uncertain conditions. No mention of Stagg or Montgomery or Tedder or Lee Mallory or any of the other commanders who participated in the decision. Just mine alone. Eisenhower could have hedged. He could have written, the weather conditions were marginal. Intelligence was incomplete. My advisors were divided. Given the circumstances, the decision was the best that could be made. That would have been true. That would have been defensible. Any reasonable person would have accepted it. But Eisenhower didn't want defensible. He wanted clean. He wanted one man standing in front of the world saying, this was me. Don't look anywhere else. Don't blame anyone else. I did this. In a world where every leader, every politician, every executive, every person in authority spends their entire career learning how to distribute blame, how to share responsibility, how to create committees so nobody is personally accountable, how to word statements so there's always somewhere to hide. Eisenhower wrote 39 words that left him nowhere to hide at all. No hedge, no disclaimer, no asterisk, no footnote, no escape hatch. Just a man and his decision and the consequences. Mine alone. You know how many times I've heard a president, a CEO, a general, or a senator say those two words? In my entire life? Never. Not once. Eisenhower wrote them on a scrap of paper and almost threw them in the garbage. Because to him, taking responsibility wasn't a gesture. It wasn't a leadership technique. It wasn't a strategy. It was just what you do. You make the call, you own the call. Period. It's so simple that it's almost invisible. And that's why nobody does it. That note is the smallest thing in the Eisenhower library. And it's the biggest. 39 words. Wrong date. Shaky handwriting. Almost thrown away. The most important letter that was never sent. Written by a man who expected to fail and wanted the world to know it wasn't the soldier's fault. Hell of a man. This one doesn't need a teaser for the next video. This one just needs you to sit with it for a minute. Think about the last time someone in charge of something, anything, looked you in the eye and said, "It was my fault. Nobody else's. Mine." And then ask yourself why that's so hard to find.